thing. Okay, back to the topic at hand. Today, right at the moment, I'm doing a cartoon. And I've mentioned before that 30 years ago, I was fairly well known. I'm not trying to make a big deal, but I was fairly well known around the country as a cartoonist. That just strikes me as so funny now because now I'm this kind of serious oil painter. And those of you who know me had no idea that I used to be mostly a funny guy. And I still enjoy cartoons, by the way. If you want to see my cartoons, there's hundreds of them on my website, dannelsonart.com. Click on illustrations and then click on cartoons. But let me tell you what I'm doing today. I'm doing 4 or 5 or 6, I don't remember how many, cartoons for a client. I'm going to get paid for this. And this is one of the rough sketches. It's actually a printout. It's not the original, but it's a rough sketch that the client, of which my client has approved. That my client has approved of to dangle a preposition. This is pretty close to my cartooning style, if it comes to rough styles anyway. And my client was vague about exactly what style or technique he wanted for the final illustrations. So here's what I'm doing. I'm going to take an educated guess. He showed me 2 of my cartoons from my website. He liked this one and he liked this one, but they're 2 fairly different styles. So I'm left with trying to I'm going to do one and send it to him and see if he likes it. And so I'm taking my best guess. I'm thinking, I think he'll probably like this style. And the style that I've chosen to do for him as a trial balloon is what I call, are you paying attention? This is what I call a poor man's scratchboard. And I'm going to explain what that means. First of all, let me show you a real scratchboard. Here's an illustration that I did for a client a couple years ago. Called this product here is called Clayboard, and this is wonderful stuff. Really, really, really. And if you want to see me do a full demo on Clayboard, then you're in YouTube. Do a search for etching a selfie. Dan Nelson etching a selfie, because it's a portrait of myself, sort of a caricature of myself. Then I do a pretty detailed demonstration of Scratchboard. But while I've got a piece of Scratchboard here, let me show you basically then how it works. I've got a brush, I've got India ink. Let's just pick an area down here, and I'm just going to make a line. Bon, there's a line. Let me rinse out that brush so we don't get... I was quite surprised to get up my etching kit. I have a kit for everything, yes. And discover a Winsor Newton Series 7 number 6. My goodness, that is one expensive brush. I don't know if I bought that or when I bought that, but look that up. Winsor Newton Series 7 number 6 is a good brush. Okay, now this is wet. Here, quick. Again, I mentioned this occasionally. This is a heat gun, not a hair dryer. It's a heat gun. I like heat guns better than hair dryers because it's quieter, and it's very hot. It says here on the nozzle, exceeds 400 degrees. And they mean it. So it works faster than a hair dryer and is quieter than a hair dryer, both of which I like very much. Okay, so there's a black mark. Let me zoom in here so you can really see what I'm doing then. Here's traditional Scratchboard. This is a tool that comes, let me see, I've got a couple different shapes. Yeah, a couple of replacement blades. You get all this stuff. You just buy this you just look up Scratchboard kit, and this is what you get in a Scratchboard kit. There's 3 different blades right there. I think I'm going to take a wider one at the moment, and you scratch through the ink into the clay any way that you want to. Now the beauty, and I point this out in my extended demonstration on Scratchboard, one of the chief beauties of this is that after you've scratched through the clay one time, you can come back and do more ink right on top of where you've just scratched. And the ink does not bleed and run like it would on a piece of paper. So that's and you can do that process. So then you can scratch it again. And let me grab a different blade this time. So you can scratch again and ink again. You can go back and forth many times. It's a delightful product. If you're into drawing and you've never tried Scratchboard, you should do yourself the favor of just trying it. And of course, this is a look that a particular client, a boat manufacturer here in North Carolina, they wanted this. It has sort of a classic, sort of an old-fashioned look about it. Okay, so that's real Scratchboard. While I'm at it, here's another illustration they did for the same client. That's real Scratchboard. Now, let me introduce you to poor man's Scratchboard. You ready? Here it is. This is a piece of paper. Now, it's not quite ordinary paper. It's, let me see. Let me write this down for you. It goes by several names. You could call it, I'm looking for a piece of scrap paper. There we go. You can call it enamel stock, or coated paper. We'll find out for sure. You wouldn't believe it. Even after I do all this, I'm going to throw that pin out right now. Even after I do all this, you wouldn't believe how many questions I'll get on this video. Say, what's the name of that paper you're using? In other words, people that don't watch the video. Okay, coated paper, clay coated. So all of these basically mean the same thing. Some people might even call it shiny paper. Okay, where do you get this kind of paper? At a office supply. Like in America, it's a Staples or a Office Depot or something like that. You should be able to buy a box of this stuff. Okay, so that's the kind of paper we're talking about. It's enamel, plate coated, shiny, and in this case, it's also thick. It's cover stock. Now, you don't have to have thick to do this, but it's just a little bit nicer to work with. Now, let me go ahead and demonstrate. You can do this poor man's Scratchboard on this paper, just the way it is. Forgive me again while I dry this for just a moment. Okay, so this is plain old store-bought, untreated. So what I'm doing here is scratching, of course, through the ink, but also scratching through the layer of clay that's on this paper. And that works pretty well. In fact, I might come back and actually use that. But let me show you, again, for those of you who want just a little bit fancier. I'm not sure fancy is the word. Some brands don't scratch as well as others. And if you looked at this really closely, you would see that in these white lines, I'm actually leaving little bits of gray that are not ideal. So here's what I've done. I've taken several pieces of, like 6 or 8 sheets of this clay-coated paper, and I have, in the last half hour or so, I've sprayed it with a workable fixative. This brand happens to be Krylon, one of the most common. The key word is workable fixative. Okay, I took them up to the garage. This stuff stinks. Do not spray this in your studio. In fact, I sprayed this in the garage and then I dried it with my heat gun out in the garage with the garage door open to dissipate the fumes. You do not want to breathe this stuff. Anything that smells bad, don't trust it. So this then is clayboard with, in a sense, a double layer of coating on it. And now watch, I want you to watch this, because this may be another teaching moment. Oh my goodness. That is not working very well. Can you see that? Let me zoom in, help you see it as much as you can. Okay, do you see what's happening there? It's beading up. Do you see that? That is not good. Now, of course, before I started this broadcast, I did some testing, so I knew this was going to happen. Let me show you a perhaps little known trick of the graphic arts illustration world. Audio peaking. Thank you, you guys, for telling me about the audio peaking. Thank you. I will adjust that right now. Thank you so much for your help. Let me turn that down. Thank you. Okay, let's try that. Thanks, guys. Here's a little known trick. This is a bar of soap. In fact, this is one of those precious bars of soap from a hotel, right? And I've got a little snack-sized Ziploc bag. There it is. This goes in my watercolor kit. What I'm going to do with this bar of soap is change the viscosity, is the word. Viscosity is a word for oiliness. How thick is a product? And I'm going to take my brush, just brush it. I'm doing way more than I need to on the bar of soap. Then, do you see I'm using just here a Post-it note as a sort of as a paint palette here. And now watch this. This should work. The hazard of, okay, I just painted that stroke right there again. That's not the brush. And let's see how it's doing. It's doing marvelously. It's not beading at all. So there you go. Little trick for some of you. That'll be worth the price of admission right there. Just knowing. Have several of these. Keep them in a little Ziploc bag in your watercolor kit. Now this one I'm actually going to keep in my etching kit. So now I have basically two tools, either a tool that's marketed as a Scratchboard tool. Oh, and that is working so much better. So now I'm not only scratching into the clay, the paper, the original clay-coated paper, I'm scratching through the layer of workable fixative. Now let me try a wider blade. This is an X-Acto blade number 11. One of the workhorses of the graphic arts industry back in the day when people did real art instead of everything on computer. That's a bit of a snob. By the way, I very much enjoy doing illustrations in Photoshop. I've done several. Again, you can find those on my website if you want. In the airbrush section, because it's like a fake airbrush technique. Okay, so that's what I'm going to be using, and let's get started then. I think I can still fit this cartoon. I have here, as you may know, a light table. Oh my goodness, I bought this light table in 1987. Can you believe that? I mean, here's part of getting old. You just can't believe the kind of numbers that you make reference to. It shocks those of us who are this age. Now, let me dim this overhead a little bit. And by the way, I've got two settings here. I can make this light table bright or brighter. And I don't know if I want it bright. Yeah, I do. So here we go. I don't know how well you can see that. Is that as zoomed in as I can get? Yep, it is. Okay, so let's here's what I'm going to do. I'm planning to do this as an etching. So I'm going to trace, by the way, this is the name of this illustration is a bad person bucket. My client is it looks to me like he's like a corporate trainer, consultant that goes in and does human resources kind of seminars. And he says one of the bad things that we tend to do as human beings is, instead of dealing with people, we ignore them by just throwing into them, oh, they're just a bad person. We throw them into the bad person bucket instead of trying to learn how to work. Okay, now I need some more soap here. So there we go. Didn't have enough soap, and look at all those lines beating up. And one of the things I'm trying to do is render this cartoon with overly fat lines. Does that make sense? So I want really fat lines, but at the same time, I want interesting marks. Now, those of you who perhaps follow me on a fairly regular basis, there I am again, harping about interesting marks. During the years that I was working largely, never exclusively, but largely as a cartoonist, I consistently got a kick out of thinking, because I had a degree in art, not that I learned all that much from my degree, but I learned a little bit. And I was always, as a cartoonist, keenly aware of the classic rules, if you will, classic guidelines of design, rules of design, if you will, rules of painting even. And I always got a chuckle. I would say to myself, as I was doing cartoons, I kind of laughed and say, this is so funny. I'm doing cartoons. Most people would have no idea how conscious, I guess is the word, the artist was of, the principles of Rembrandt, the principles of design. But I certainly was, and of course, here today, I certainly am. So the principle I just mentioned was, when I'm doing this cartoon, it is paramount that these marks that I'm making right now be pleasant marks. Let me paraphrase something. Perhaps if you follow me, you've heard me say this often. The essence of a good cartoon, the essence of a good cartoon, or good cartooning, I should say, the essence of good cartooning is making interesting marks. Isn't that fascinating? Most people would think, oh, cartoons are just funny pictures. Haha, you just make funny drawings. No, you don't. The most important process in cartoon is making interesting marks. Now, in this case, you can see that I'm drawing with very, very bold strokes. That's because I'm going to come back and carve into these lines with a Scratchboard tool, either an X-Acto knife or a literal made-for Scratchboard tool. So that's why I'm doing all these fat lines. And of course, in so doing, I hope, here's a good question. Well, why? Why don't you just draw the lines the way you want them? Why are you going to all the bother of creating all these fat lines, and then you're going to come and scratch them? Why don't you just make them skinny in the first place if you want them skinny? And again, if you look at my cartoon page, you see that I've done hundreds, and I've actually done that, probably 10,000 cartoons where I don't do a Scratchboard, where I literally do the line that I want. Well, why do I do Scratchboard? The answer is because it creates, and let's do what I didn't do here. Let's do a shadow. It creates interesting marks. And I see here, by the way, that at some point I dragged my finger through some wet ink and have made a little bit of a mess here. I don't like that. But I will certainly get around it. Now let's do some shadows under this guy's leg. There's a bit of a shadow. And here's a bit of a shadow. So what I'm doing right now, my client may not, I don't know, he may not approve, he may not like what I'm doing here. So all of this, I think he probably will, but it's very possible that he won't. He'll say, no, I was hoping for more of a blank. Okay, so just understand, this is all, and that's why, you know, how much do I charge for this? Well, more than you might think right at first. Not very much, honestly, in my opinion. But included in the price is this experimentation sketch. I've already done sketches for him. He actually approved of the sketches pretty quickly, with a minimum of changes. So that's good. So didn't lose a lot of money on the sketches. Okay, back to the heat gun. I love my heat gun. Because it's fast and it's not too loud. If you're not careful, the paper or whatever you're blowing this on can start boiling, or can start melting, or can catch on fire. So you have to be careful. Don't forget, it is over 400 degrees. I have boiled acrylic paint on the canvas many times with that little device. Okay, let's get my soap out of the way here, and my little sticky note palette. Now, choose which blade I want. I think I want the wider of the two. And I still don't know exactly what style my client is going to like, because even with this, there are a number of, as you can see, let me show you again. Here's a Scratchboard illustration. I am definitely not going to do this on this cartoon, right? This is way too light and feathery and detailed. I want this, whoops, sorry about that, earthquake. I want this cartoon to be fairly thick lined. And again, why am I doing Scratchboard? Because it results in interesting marks. Not liking the way that blade's working. Let me try another one. Also not crazy about that, the way that one's working. Let me try yet a third blade. I don't know how long these things last before you could call them worn out, but that one might be a little bit dull. I'll definitely go to an X-Acto blade if I find myself having trouble. So there are a couple things that I do besides carving out mostly the middle of these fat lines, as you see me starting to do here. That's one thing I do. The other thing, of course, is I will clean up wherever I want to. I'll shave down the edges of these lines. Nope, not liking that either. So here we go, back to the X-Acto blade. If you are an artist and if you use an X-Acto knife, even a moderate amount, and you use them for everything, of course for airbrush, but just you use them for everything. Let me recommend that you just get in the habit of, by the way, of buying buying the blades in a box of 100. Don't mess around with those little bubble packs where you get 10 blades. You'll go through 10 blades so quickly, and then you'll be stuck wanting to do a job, and you've run out of sharp blade. The real reason for buying so many is so that you feel free to replace the blades frequently. Like, I'll probably go through 2 blades, maybe 3, in the course of scratching this one illustration. Does that make sense? And if I didn't have a box of 100, I would feel stingy. I feel like, oh no, I better stretch this blade. I better really make it last. And then thereby doing damage to your artwork by using a dull blade. Okay, this is hair. So I'm going to actually open the end of that. Does it look like I'm making this stuff up? That would be exactly correct. I am making this stuff up. Here's another little tool that I find myself needing right now. A brush. Okay, I don't expect you to stay and watch me do all of this illustration. I think it's going to get a little bit too boring. So let me just proceed for a few more minutes, and then I'll end this daily art adventure. I mentioned I have 2 illustration jobs going on today. One is this cartoon, and the other is the little girl in the big woods job that I've mentioned several times. I'm meeting with my client, that client, this afternoon, where I can do sketches in his presence, and we can hopefully work out a whole lot of bugs very quickly. I want to do enough for you to see this face when I'm done. To those of you who are artists, I hope that what I'm doing right now just looks like a lot of fun. I would think if this doesn't look like fun to you, you're probably not an artist. Because I hope you're going, man, I want to try that. Good. That is a correct response, in my opinion. Man, that looks like fun. And mostly what I'm doing so far is just carving out the middle of these lines. Now, I think what I'm going to do when I finish this process of carving out these lines, I'm going to come back with a fine pen. And at this time, in this case, I don't think I need to use a rapidograph pen. I think I can get away with a high quality felt tip pen and do some very simple cross hatching in combination with the etching. That's what I think I'm going to do, because I think that's what my client would like the best. So again, I'm taking a guess as to what this client wants. One of the pictures, one of the cartoons of mine that he picked out, he said one had a little bit of simple cross hatching in it, and the other one did not have any. One of them was an etching like this with no cross hatching. The other was actually a bold line cartoon with a little bit of cross hatching. So I'm going to do a combination of the two and hope that he goes, yeah, that's perfect. And of course, it's a gamble, because I don't know. After I show him this sample, then he'll probably say, something like, yeah, no, I was hoping for more blank. That's just all part of the business, right? Now, it would be wonderful if he says, yeah, that's perfect. That would be great. But you cannot always get what you want. And the client, of course, he's paying the money. He or she is paying the money. He or she is the boss in this case. And I can't be all artsy and have my ego wrapped up in what they say. Does that make sense? That's part of being an illustrator. By the way, just for speaking of being an illustrator, I absolutely believe that the best education that you can get in the world of art, is being a freelance illustrator. I honestly believe that freelance illustrators are the crack troops, are the special ops of the art world. Let me give you a funny little story. 25 years ago probably, I walked into we have an art gallery downtown where 20 or 30 or 40 artists, I don't know how many, share a space, a big warehouse, and they're all required to be there a certain number of hours every week, and it's a gallery space and a working studio space, right? Very, very well known. I won't mention the name of it now. Very well known. A lot of cities have things like this. And I was walking through, admiring the artwork, enjoying the artwork, and I came upon a young man. He was 30-something, maybe mid-30s. And this is 25 years ago. I wasn't much older than he was. And he did portraiture. And he had a lovely, large portrait of, I can't remember what it was of, a man or a woman or a family. I don't think it was a family. I think it was just one individual. This story's going somewhere, so hang on. I'm gonna brag on illustrators here in a minute. And it was fairly large, like maybe 3 by 4 feet or 4 by 5 feet, pretty big. As I remember, probably life-size portrait of a person. And I don't know what possessed me. A moment of stupidity came over me. And I said, wow, cool, that's beautiful. Have you been working on that a couple weeks? Now, here's what was going on here. I was a freelance illustrator. He was a quote-unquote fine artist. You see the difference? I was a freelance illustrator. He was a fine artist. So I looked at his work and said, yeah, I'll give him the benefit of the doubt. I'll say that's probably a whole 2 weeks of work. Oh my goodness. It was stupid. I don't know what possessed me. He glowered at me, scowled at me. He didn't cuss, bless his little heart. And he said, I've been working on this. He said, I've been working on this for 6 months. Oh my goodness, I was so embarrassed. I slunk out of his studio, embarrassed because I had insulted him. The fact is, I was embarrassed. The real fact is, as an artist, he should have been embarrassed. And that's, if you want to become a good artist, put your money where your mouth is, so to speak. Put your skill where the money is, and become a freelance illustrator. Work your butt off. Illustrators learn how to work. People that go straight from, let's say, earn a Bachelor of Fine Arts degree, even the ones that learn great skill, they get a Bachelor of Fine Arts degree, and then they get a Master's of Fine Arts degree, and then they go into the world. And by the way, this is I think the atelier people, who I generally like very much, I think they have some of this same affliction. Then they go into the real world, and they think that when they get a commission to do a portrait, they've got 9 months to finish it. Man, you have to get paid $500,000. That's an exaggeration, but you get the point. To make money at that rate, you have to be paid, $30,000, which if you can get that, good for you. But an illustrator has to do a portrait. I mean, I'm not kidding. Now, of course, illustrators cheat. We trace and project and so forth. You bet. But at the same time, we learned how to work hard. We'd stay up till 4 o'clock in the morning to get the job done. We would, all illustrators, every illustrator listening to me right now, if there are any, you know exactly what I'm talking about. An illustrator does what has to be done to get the job done. And more than once, I would get a phone call like, Dan, we need a portrait of the bank president. Oh, and by the way, we need it the day after tomorrow. Now, I can refuse to take the job. I can get all huffy and say, What are you talking about? I can't do a portrait in a day and a half. You must be crazy. Yeah, if you can do that, you'll never get hired, right? You say, yes, sir, I'll have it. No problem. Send the picture right on over. And then you work your butt off and you do a portrait. And it has to be dead on. If you're an illustrator, it can't be, kind of artsy and cool and groovy, modern looking. No, 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 no. It has to be perfect. And so, of course, you cheat. But even while you're cheating, you're developing skills. Anyway, so 3 cheers for illustration. I hope that the illustration industry continues to exist for the younger generation, because there's no question in my mind that that was my real schooling. That's where I learned my skills, was because I had to. Years ago, on one of my websites somewhere, it says three forces conspired to make me the artist I am today. Number 1, the joy of creation. Check. Very true. Number 2, clients with deadlines. Check. True. And number 3, the threat of starvation. And guess which one of the 3 drove me to do the most work? You got it. It was the third one, the threat of, having to pay the mortgage. That's why I worked my butt off. That's why, forgive me too. I can't prove this, but for years and years and years, I have wondered. This is weird, and I've never heard anybody else say it, so that's why I'm going to say it. I'm not sure. I'll be easy. Very, very, very few wealthy people ever achieve their full potential. Very few wealthy people ever achieve their full potential because they don't have to. Part of the reason I worked so hard as an illustrator is simply because I was the breadwinner. My wife didn't have a job most of our years together growing up. She had 4 kids. Boy, did she have a job. 2 biological and 2 adopted. Boy, did she have a job. My goodness. But she didn't get paid for it most of those years. And so why did I work so hard? Why did I stay up till, 3, 4, 5, 6 o'clock in the morning? The answer? Because I had to. Now, somebody else, of course, might be a morning person, and you might go to bed at 10 o'clock and get up at 3:30. That's fine. But one way or the other, many of us in the illustration or even the graphic arts business, graphic designers, have the same kind of pressure that illustrators do. That's just part of the territory. And if I was wealthy or rich, would I ever have become the artist I am today? For me, there's no question. No, I would not have. In fact, just last Friday, I did not feel like going out plein air painting. And when I got down there, I discovered 40-mile-an-hour winds. Why didn't I pack right up and come back home? Well, because I've got a local gallery who's clamoring for more paintings of Raleigh. That's one reason. And the other is doggone it, I need the money. So I stayed out there in the howling wind for 2 hours and painted. That was the painting that I finished, or almost finished, yesterday, as it turns out. Again, so why is one musician better than the other? Usually it's pretty fair. It's because the better musician worked harder than the one that's not quite so good. Same thing in art. Why is one athlete better than the other? Well, sure, there's natural talent, but usually it's because one worked harder than the other. Well, you don't need to listen to me pontificate like somebody's grandfather, even though I am somebody's grandfather. That's enough. I'll bring you back in late in this process when I'm doing some cross-hatching. Okay, good enough for now. Thanks for watching, and I'll look forward to being with you. All right, welcome back, everybody. if you missed the first half of this broadcast, I have a rough sketch for a cartoon, and I spent several minutes creating this, what I call poor man's Scratchboard, fake Scratchboard. Watch the beginning of the broadcast to see how I did that. And I'm going to do two things now. One is, by the way, I am happily accompanied by my 3 grandchildren. Say hi, kids.
Hi.
They are being wonderfully well behaved. And I scanned this artwork in my scanner, tweaked it ever so slightly in Photoshop, just bumped the contrast and printed it out. So one of the things I want to do that I'm going to send to my client is I'm going to do a variation, I think. I'm thinking of doing just some real simple cross-hatching without the cross. That is just hatching then, right? And just see if by any chance my client prefers this look. I'm a little bit actually uncertain about where to put this cross-hatching. I'm almost mixing styles. But again, I'm always glad to put give my client alternatives, options. So I'm going to do just, and then I will scan this image as well and send both versions to my client and let him decide which he likes better. Just the Scratchboard without the hatching, or Scratchboard with the hatching. Okay? Just a little bit here and there, not too much, I'm thinking. Just a little bit more shading, a little bit more variation in texture. Yeah, I think I wasn't sure if I was going to like this, but again, I'll let him decide, but at least it's coming off as acceptable. Let me zoom in here so you guys can see what I'm doing. Does that make sense? I'm going to do one more thing today with you before I leave you. Another trick. If I call this cheater, poor man's Scratchboard, then I want to show you even poorer man's, even more of a cheater technique than that. But in just a minute, let me finish this. A little bit up here. Yeah, I'm actually surprised. So here's the two options. Two of the options I'm going to show him. One is just the Scratchboard technique, and the other is Scratchboard with the additional pen cross-hatching without the cross. So just hatching, if you will. Okay, now let me show you even a poorer man's cross-hatching. It is this. And by the way, yeah, if you go to my website, dannelsonart.com, and if you click on illustrations and then click on cartoons, in the cartoon section there are a number of what look like woodblock or Scratchboard cartoons. Many of them were done with this technique. What I have in my hand here is an office supply, not an art product, but an office supply product. It's a correction pen. And yes, by the way, I have looked quite, this is definitely a product recommendation. The Presto Jumbo Correction Pen, fine point, is, in my opinion, far and away the best, the most easy to use correction pen. So just a week or two ago, I ordered a dozen of these on Amazon. So here's how this is going to work then. Instead of scratching, I just come in here and act as though it was a scratch board. I mean, come on, how easy. Talk about cheater. Now you know what I mean when I say an even poorer man's scratch board. Talk about cheating. So this is obviously so much faster. And yes, I'm going to send this to my client, this illustration as well. And because it's going to have a slightly different look, you see? This is a little bit more clunky, a little bit more, not crude is not the word, but it's not as fine line as the real scratch, the real fake scratch, the real fake scratch board. Our terminology is getting quite tortured here. All right, Lakey Poo, keep it down, sweetie pie. So you can see how fast this kind of illustration can be done. It is so, I was so ecstatic when I discovered this 15 or 20 years ago, that you can accomplish this appearance of Scratchboard, or really, honestly, this looks a little bit more like a woodcut than a Scratchboard. But hey, I'm not being fussy here. You can call it either one. I might let you finish, since this goes so quickly. I might let you finish watching me do this. And again, it's a Presto is the brand by Pentel. It's an office supply product. You don't get this at an art store. You get it in America, Staples, Office Max, Office Depot kind of thing. And I've tried, I don't literally mean I've tried them all, but I've tried them all. And this is the one that works the best. Fits in your hand, flows most consistently, and so on. And again, I want to say to you, if this doesn't look like fun to you, if you're not going, doggone, I want to try that, then you have a question, you have reason, I'm being silly here, but you have reason to ask whether you're an artist. Because this should be looking like, dang, that looks like fun. I'm going to try that. Proper response. Proper response. And of course, any technique that is so fast as this, it's just got to be, you know, an illustrator's dream. So between you and me, I doubt that my client is going to watch this video. If he does, fine. But I'm going to present at least 3 images to him. 3 different styles. Are you with me? This one. Which one do you like better, by the way? Let me back up. I think chat is on. If anybody wants to give me, express an opinion, I'm all ears. You know, hard to say. I don't know which one I like better. And of course, then I'm going to send him this one as well. And we'll just see. Between you and me, I would be tickled if he picked this one, because it cuts down my investment of time considerably, increases my rate per hour, so to speak. It won't take me nearly as long to do the illustrations. But if not, of course, I'm perfectly happy to do the first kind that I showed you as well. And of course, you could ask, could all of this be done with a real Scratchboard? Absolutely, yes, absolutely you could. It could. Why not? And Scratchboard would actually be easier. Well, it's a whole lot more expensive, as you can imagine. That's why I'm calling it a poor man. The other one, calling it a poor man's Scratchboard. If that's a poor man's Scratchboard, then what is this? Starving man's Scratchboard. Okay, I am just about done. Is that fun or what? Yep, I think I'll leave it like that. There you go. I'm going to finish this broadcast right here then. And we'll see what happens with my client, okay? Thanks you guys for watching. And if you enjoyed this, please subscribe if you haven't done so already. And if you have artist friends, please tell your artist friends to watch me, would you? Appreciate it. Thanks. Bye-bye.